Okay folks, today we are in the city. We are doing a comparison between the Galaxy S21 Ultra and the Canon 90D DSLR. Both cost about the same price, $1,800. So it's going to be an interesting, going to do photos and videos. Let's see how it turns out. Alright, so here we are at Roma Street Parklands, and this is where the comparison begins between the S21 Ultra and the Canon 90D. Like I said, both $1,800 devices. And dare I say it, the Canon 90D for the first time is being put into auto mode. I've never used it in auto mode until today. So both sets of comparisons will be fully shot in auto mode for photo and video. So no cheating. We're going to do some macros, some landscapes, a few other different types of photography and video, some slow motion, and just check out the overall quality. And I definitely have to be honest with everyone here. I'm a bit of a purist and I really hope the Canon 90D wins, but I am not going to be biased. I'm going to just lay it out so you can see the photos and video unedited. And I'll let you know which one's which as we go on. Have some fun with it. Comment down below. Alrighty folks, back in the studio, and right now we're just going through some of the images to see what I actually think of the photos. And right now I'm recording 4K 25 frames per second on the 90D, 4K 30 frames per second on the S21 Ultra. And the first thing I want to talk about is saturation. Now a lot of these photos on the S21 Ultra are heavily saturated, and they do look amazing on your phone. When you're scrolling through on your phone, these photos look incredible. And I think that's where they're designed to be viewed, is on a phone. Once you take them off the phone and put them on a computer and look at them in any other way than on your phone, then you can start to see that the saturation isn't always good. It's actually too oversaturated and not true to life. Now, these were both shot in full auto mode for everything. And I really do believe that the S21 Ultra has too much saturation. However, if I do choose to edit the photos from the Canon 90D, I can add in that saturation and make it look as colorful and as bright as I want. But the S21 Ultra definitely oversaturates and over brightens the images so they're not actually true to life. And I also think that the Canon adds in the right amount of contrast and a more realistic looking set amount of contrast to these images as well. Canon colors are famous for their video and photography, and a lot of people can just say that Canon colors are unbeatable, color science, all those magical terms, and I think this is evident in these images. You can really see the difference between just an oversaturated picture and some good colors that represent true to life. Now the next point I want to talk about is sharpness, and I really think that the sharpness stands out here on the Canon, especially when we start to get into these longer zoom lengths. You can really see the difference. So the 90D can zoom out to about 135mm on the crop sensor, and the S21 Ultra can do that 10, 30, whatever times zoom, and you can see here that I tried to keep them at the same focal length as best I could, and you can really see the S21 Ultra falls apart, especially on this image here where the buildings between the two trees off in the distance. The foreground's fallen apart on the S21 Ultra and the background's fallen apart as well, whereas with the Canon it's nicely blurred in the foreground and the focus is on the building, and the building looks much sharper and it's definitely a better image. And one of those areas where I was quite surprised with the S21 Ultra was with the dynamic range. Now, we all know this is computational and it does quite a good job in low light. I was very impressed with the S21 Ultra. Dynamic range seems to be better, but the image still isn't better. So you can definitely see more in the shadows, especially when it got darker in the evening, and that was quite pleasing. So again, on a smartphone, this looks really good, and it looks like the S21 Ultra is actually kicking ass. But in reality, when you pull those photos out together and put them side by side on a computer screen or even blow them up, you can definitely see the quality lies with the bigger sensor and the better lens through the Canon 90D. Now, this is only a kit lens I was using, it wasn't like a pro lens. Now, when it comes to ISO, you can really see a big difference here, and it actually does favor the S21 Ultra, and that's because the Canon can go up to like 25,600 ISO and the S21 Ultra can only go up to 3,200. Okay, I actually can't see the screen on the S21 Ultra, so I just had to make sure it was still recording. It got to 8 minutes and I stopped it and restarted it. And by the way, don't forget to comment down below which image you think looks better. Canon 90D, S21 Ultra, 4K 30, 4K 25. And I'll do a quick snippet as well in 8K because the S21 Ultra comes in 8K as well, which is phenomenal for a phone, but we'll see how digital it looks. So with the ISO, we definitely get more grain with the Canon, and I think that's just because you get the higher ISO reading. So that's definitely a point for me to the S21 Ultra. Now, bokeh. This is a sticky one because this can be subject to your opinion. Well, it always is subject to your opinion, but bokeh has to look a certain way for my mind, and I really do think that the Canon 90D excels here. And you can get a lot more bokeh from your image, and you can get a lot more focus on the subject you want, whereas the S21 Ultra with that smaller sensor gets a lot of things in focus, and that's just one of the limitations of a smartphone sensor. They're quite small and that's how they cope. They get as much light as they can in, and you get a lot of things in focus. Even though it might be f2 or f2.8, you're still going to get a lot of things in focus, and it's harder to get that background blur. However, you can get some good looking bokeh from the S21 Ultra. You get up closer to your subject and take the photo, and then that blurs out the background nicely, especially if you've got some bright colors and lights behind your subject, and then you're going to get a really nice image. So that's important to look at. But I do think the Canon wins here. It just looks better. And all these are unedited too. These photos are taken in auto mode and unedited. So I could actually add in a lot more color and saturation into these Canon images, but I haven't. I've left them as is, straight out of camera. Now, this is not something that can be judged either, and this is where I like to talk about things that look true to life. And I have to say the Canon looks way more true to life, in my opinion, and that was my experience while I was out shooting as well. And as you can see from these images, the Canon definitely looks different to the S21 Ultra, and out on the day the Canon was resembling real life to me more so than the S21 Ultra. So I'll give a big tick there to Canon for making everything look realistic and true to life. And if you wanted to alter that, you can later on in post, but straight out of camera in auto mode, true to life, Canon was killing it. S21 Ultra was doing a great job, but nowhere near the quality that I was seeing from the Canon. The next part I want to talk about is burst mode. So Canon 90D, you can put it into a certain mode and it'll take however many frames per second images. But the S21 Ultra, hands down, can take more images quicker. And to my surprise, more of them were in focus than with the 90D. But there's some caveats here. The burst mode on the S21 Ultra, everything was heavily digitized, and you can really see it in the image and in the colors here. And most things were in focus. So you've got a tree 60 meters away that is almost in as much focus as the subject that I was photographing. And you can see here my daughter running towards the camera. I'm hitting burst mode for about a second and a half on each device. S21 Ultra got more images. S21 Ultra got more images in focus, but the images that Canon did get actually look better, a lot better than the S21 Ultra. That's my opinion. You can see for yourself in the video here. You let me know what you think in the comments down below. You might think this is turning into a bit of an S21 Ultra bash, and maybe it is, but that's just because I think these images from the DSLR are a lot better. Okay, now we're going to quickly cover off on the video, and I have to say that it was quite similar with video. Now, the more you zoom in on the S21 Ultra, the worse the picture gets, especially when you're competing with a DSLR with a zoom lens. The picture just gets worse on the phone. It gets more digital and more grainy, and it's really easy to see the difference. Now, when you're not zooming in, it's a bit harder to see the difference, and the S21 Ultra can look quite good, and it offers a lot more video options. So you have your Full HD, you have 4K, and you have 8K. Now for the last part of the video, we've got 8K in the Galaxy S21 Ultra up against 4K on the Canon 90D. 25 frames per second here on the Canon 90D, 24 frames per second on the S21 Ultra. It's in the same timeline on Premiere Pro, so take what you will out of it. However, tell me what you think. Does the 4K in the Canon look better than the 8K in the S21 Ultra? Without being able to see the back, I'm going to say that the Canon 90D 4K looks better than the S21 Ultra. If I'm wrong, I will put big letters right here to say I'm wrong. But I'm not normally wrong. We all know that. I really am impressed with the capabilities of the video in the S21 Ultra, and the options are better on the S21 Ultra. But when you get the 4K and 1080p and slow motion, the images are so much better out of the Canon. Again, straight out of camera, true to life colors, just the right amount of contrast, the right amount of saturation, the right amount of background blur. It's not digital, the video is quite smooth looking, and it really is hard to compete with the Canon in that 1080p slow motion range, and even in the 4K 25 frames per second here on the Canon, and the 4K 30 frames per second on the S21 Ultra. I think you can see a big difference. So overall, I honestly think the DSLRs are still way ahead of the smartphones. These smartphones are incredible and they fit in your back pocket, and if you're not really into photography but you like taking pretty good photos, this S21 Ultra is one of the best on the market when it comes to smartphones. But I just don't think they're at that level yet of competing with like DSLRs and mirrorless cameras that come with detachable lenses and really help you to capture a good quality image. I think it's still in the DSLR's hands if you have an interest in photography. If you don't have an interest in photography, but you really love your smartphones and your high-end smartphones, you're going to love the S21 Ultra, and there's nothing I can do to change that fact that it is a great phone with a great camera. Expensive, but great. And if you are really into your photography, then I think something around this Canon 90D price point and above, it's just night and day and miles ahead of your smartphones. But this has been my video on the S21 Ultra versus a DSLR for photo and video. Both shot in auto mode, both shot on tripods for most of them, on the same tripod at the same time. So it's as fair as it possibly can be. I think the Canon 90D kicks ass. I think the S21 Ultra is an amazing smartphone, but it's not a DSLR or mirrorless camera. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. I really appreciate you all watching this video. It's been fun making this, and I will catch you in the next one.